Deep in a winter forest, one man sets out to reclaim a crumbling stone ruin. Snow and encroaching ivy have reclaimed the collapsed walls, turning human history back into wilderness. Squeezing through an arched entrance, he leaves the elements behind. The structure offers a crucial advantage. Thick stone acts as a thermal mass, blocking the wind and holding heat far better than a temporary lean-to. Inside, the arched ceiling remains intact, distributing the weight of the masonry overhead. While the darkness conceals decades of decay, the dry floor of dead leaves confirms the roof still sheds water. Working by headlamp, he unloads his supplies, establishing a secure base camp. A dog joins him, an early warning system against unseen threats in the wild. Before building a fire, every resource must be organized. He pours feed into a makeshift trough, ensuring his companion is fueled for the plummeting temperatures ahead. With a bucket stove fabricated from scavenged metal, the next priority is insulation and structure. Using a hand axe, he shapes thick wooden beams to reinforce the space. Heavy stones are repositioned to create elevated platforms, keeping gear off the damp, freezing earth. A layer of straw on the floor traps dead air, breaking the conductive cold of the ground. Finally, a camouflage tarp creates an interior partition, reducing the total volume of air that the small stove needs to heat. Venting exhaust is critical in enclosed stone spaces. He slots a rusty metal pipe through an existing gap in the masonry, wedging it tight with a piece of broken brick. This shim prevents the pipe from shifting under thermal expansion. With the chimney secured, the smoke drafts outside, leaving the interior air breathable. Above the rustic wooden door, a heavy beam is adjusted to reinforce the entryway. bracing against the crushing weight of the shifting stones above. The bucket stove transforms the freezing ruins into a functional kitchen. Its thin metal walls radiate heat instantly, demanding constant attention to the fuel load. As the fire stabilizes, he prepares a high-calorie meal of sausages, onion, and potato. Fat and complex carbohydrates are essential for maintaining core temperature through a freezing winter night. Slicing the ingredients on a wooden board, he shares the dense protein with the dog. In a survival scenario, a fed companion is an alert and energetic ally. The stone walls capture and reflect the stove's radiant energy, slowly raising the ambient temperature. Light dictates how much work can be done after sunset. He mixes a resinous compound, stirring fine particles into a translucent paste. This acts as a slow-burning fuel for localized heat or illumination. As total darkness consumes the forest outside, the interior comes alive with the warm glow of strategically placed candles. Tucked into recessed stone niches, the small flames are protected from drafts. The flickering light casts long shadows against the rough walls, turning an abandoned ruin into a temporary sanctuary. Morning reveals the stark reality of the winter landscape. After a hot breakfast in the dimly lit room, he packs his gear. The stone shelter provided a critical refuge, but a woodsman must keep moving to find sustainable resources. Leaving the crumbling walls behind, he and the dog step back out into the silent, snow-covered forest, ready to read the terrain for the next camp. The journey leads to a dense, damp woodland where the snow has receded, leaving a carpet of decaying oak leaves. He pauses to forage pale winter flowers, carefully storing them in a plastic bag for medicinal or nutritional use. The wet environment supports amphibians, like the fire salamander navigating the damp foliage. Its bright yellow spots are a stark warning of toxicity, a natural defense mechanism. The terrain soon shifts, revealing a towering rock wall, a natural windbreak, offering the foundation for a new camp. A sheer cliff face provides excellent protection from the wind and acts as a massive thermal reflector. He begins by digging a shallow foundation and arranging heavy stones in a semicircle against the rock. This low wall serves a dual purpose. It anchors the base of a lean-to and prevents the creeping dampness of the forest floor from seeping into the shelter. By utilizing the existing geology, he cuts his construction time and caloric expenditure in half. Next, he gathers sturdy wooden poles to form the skeleton of the lean-to. Using tight lashings, he binds the joints, relying on tension and friction to create a rigid frame against the rock face. A simple A-frame structure distributes the weight of snow or rain efficiently. Over this skeleton, he drapes a durable fabric tarp. The fabric acts as a windproof and waterproof membrane, instantly creating a microclimate beneath it. The dog watches patiently as the open cliff is transformed into a dry, enclosed refuge. A shelter is only complete with a heat source. Striking a ferrocerium rod, he showers sparks at nearly 3,000 degrees onto dry tinder, quickly coaxing a flame to life. The dog rests on a raised cot, insulated from the cold dirt. To sustain the fire, heavy fuel is required. He locates a fallen hardwood log, its dense grain perfect for a slow, hot burn. Using a folding saw, he sections the timber, preparing to haul the structural and combustible wood back to the cliff. Wearing a waterproof poncho against the damp air, he elevates the shelter's design. Heavy vertical logs are leaned directly against the overhanging sandstone, locked in place to form a solid, impenetrable wall. This palisade design deflects wind and retains the heat radiating from the fire pit just outside. Trimming the wood with a hand axe ensures a tight fit, minimizing drafts. He crawls into the narrow gap between the rock and the timber wall to test the stability. Inside, the space is cramped but highly efficient, requiring very little body heat to stay warm. As the surrounding forest is swallowed by thick, freezing fog, the camp relies entirely on the steady output of the fire. The stone-lined pit contains the heat, creating a deep bed of glowing coals. He buries raw potatoes directly into the ashes. This primitive baking method surrounds the root vegetables with even, indirect heat, cooking them thoroughly without burning the skin. Pulling the blackened potato from the fire and slicing it open reveals steaming, carbohydrate-rich flesh, vital energy for regulating body temperature in the deepening cold. night falls, dropping temperatures below freezing. The vibrant orange flames cast dancing shadows against the sheer rock face, pushing back the encroaching darkness. Inside the lean-to, the dog sleeps soundly on the elevated cot, safe and warm. The fire is now the lifeline of the camp. The massive sandstone wall behind the flames absorbs the intense heat, slowly radiating it back into the shelter throughout the night. By morning, a fresh layer of snow blankets the forest, masking the dead leaves in white. The fire pit has burned down to cold ash, leaving the air biting and crisp. The log lean-to successfully bore the weight of the snowfall, keeping the interior dry. Now, the immediate priority is coaxing the frozen embers back to life. With the fire restored, breakfast begins. Chopped vegetables are simmered in a metal pot directly over the flames. Boiling not only cooks the food, but extracts vital nutrients into the broth. In sub-zero conditions, consuming hot liquids is the fastest way to elevate a dropping core temperature. To upgrade the shelter's insulation, he harvests green pine boughs. Shaking the heavy, accumulated snow from the branches prevents moisture from soaking his clothes. Pine needles contain trapped air and resin, making them an excellent barrier against the wind. Carrying the bundles back to the rocky alcove, he prepares to weave them into the existing timber wall. With the pine insulation woven into the shelter, the focus returns to caloric intake. He threads thick chunks of raw meat onto long, carved wooden skewers. Suspending them over the glowing embers allows the fat to render slowly, basting the meat as it cooks. Hardwood coals provide a consistent, smokeless heat, searing the exterior to lock in moisture. The semicircle of stacked firewood around the pit slowly dries in the ambient heat, ensuring the next batch of fuel ignites quickly and cleanly. The final morning at the cliffside shelter is quiet. He shares the remaining food with the dog, soaking in the ambient warmth of the dying fire. A successful bushcraft camp leaves minimal trace. He packs his gear, organizing his bright orange backpack for weight distribution and balance on uneven terrain. The shelter stands as a testament to working with the landscape, utilizing the rock face rather than fighting the elements in the open. The pine boughs will eventually dry and fall away, slowly returning the wood to the earth. Stepping away from the sandstone cliff, man and dog disappear back into the dense, green forest, seeking deeper isolation. Pushing further into the untamed woods, he climbs a steep, leaf-slicked slope to investigate a massive rock overhang. A deep crevice cuts into the hillside, offering a natural cave roof. Sweeping the interior with a flashlight, he checks for structural stability and animal dens. Finding it empty, he crawls through the narrow opening. The tight dimensions restrict airflow, which is an advantage for retaining heat. Unrolling his sleeping bag inside the dim recess, he establishes a hidden, highly defensible footprint in the wild. A cave camp requires an immense amount of processed wood. He hoists a heavy section of a fallen tree trunk over his shoulder, fighting gravity up the steep incline. Downed timber is nature's standing inventory, seasoned by the air and ready to burn. Using a hand saw, he cuts the log into manageable rounds. A sharp axe makes quick work of splitting the wood, exposing the dry inner grain. Splitting wood increases its surface area, allowing oxygen to reach the fibers for a much hotter, more efficient fire. Preparation dictates success when starting a fire in a damp environment. He arranges split logs at the cave entrance to act as a dry platform, elevating the fire off the cold, wet soil. Crawling into the narrow space, he uses a fixed blade knife to shave fine curls of dry wood into a metal tin. These delicate shavings catch the slightest spark, transitioning a brief flash of heat into a sustainable ember. Striking the spine of his knife against the ferro rod, a shower of molten sparks rains down into the tin. The fine wood shavings catch instantly. He picks up the glowing bundle, gently blowing oxygen into the core to expand the heat. Once the flame is established, he transfers it to the prepared platform of logs. Fire requires a delicate balance of heat, fuel, and oxygen. He feeds the nascent blaze with progressively larger twigs, careful not to smother it, until a roaring fire illuminates the rock overhang. As rain begins to fall, dotting the green leaves of the canopy, the true value of the overhang becomes clear. Outside, he chops additional firewood directly on a tarp, keeping the freshly split wood out of the mud. Back inside, the fire creates a localized barrier against the creeping dampness. He wraps himself in a heavy gray blanket, settling next to his sleeping bag. The heat reflects off the low rock ceiling, wrapping the small space in a cocoon of dry, trapped warmth. To optimize the fire's draw, he uses a shovel to clear debris and excavate a shallow pit on the cave floor. Managing the ash layer allows better airflow to the base of the fire. Reaching deep into a dark recess of the overhang, he retrieves a stored green bag, keeping his essential supplies tucked away from the sparks. With the shelter secured and the fire roaring, the evening routine slows down. He carves fresh wooden skewers with his knife, stripping the bark to remove any bitter tannins. The dog rests comfortably on a thick bed of fallen leaves, thoroughly exhausted from the day's trek. Working in the dim light of the cave, he threads rations onto the pointed sticks. The intense heat of the fire casts a steady orange glow, transforming the primitive rock overhang into a functioning kitchen. He hovers the skewers inches above the intense, glowing red embers. Unlike open flames, which can scorch food unpredictably with soot and smoke, a mature coal bed provides clean, radiating infrared heat. When the exterior develops a heavy char, he uses his knife to scrape away the burnt edges, revealing the cooked, tender center. Out here, a hot meal is the ultimate morale booster. Hydration is a constant chore. Instead of hiking to a stream in the dark, he utilizes the recent rainfall. Water runs in rivulets down the deeply furrowed bark of an ancient oak tree. By pressing a container against the trunk, he catches the natural runoff, filtering the rainwater directly from the forest canopy. This passive collection saves valuable energy. Back beside the campfire, he opens a small sealed packet. The collected water has been brought to a boil, purifying it of any organic pathogens. He pours the steaming liquid from his metal pot into a smaller green cup. A hot drink before sleep elevates the core temperature, making the long, cold night ahead significantly more comfortable. The bond between a woodsman and his dog is forged in quiet moments like this. He pauses to pet the Malinois, who rolls over in complete trust, insulated by the dry leaves. As the evening deepens, he turns his attention back to the fire. Tending it with small sticks, he carefully builds a sustainable coal bed. The firelight flickers against the rough stone walls, holding back the impenetrable darkness of the damp forest outside. Using a headlamp, he inspects the cave floor and sweeps the low rock ceiling above him, checking for structural loose stones or unwanted insects. Situational awareness doesn't stop just because camp is made. Satisfied with the perimeter, he sits back down beside his sleeping dog. He reaches for the stacked wood, placing a thick piece onto the glowing embers. The heavy timber will smolder for hours, ensuring they won't wake up freezing. A fire salamander emerges from the damp wood, drawn to the radiant warmth. He gently touches the amphibian, a fleeting encounter with the forest's quiet nocturnal life, before stoking the red embers. Dawn arrives in a thick gray mist, cloaking the tall pines in silence. Inside the cave, the fire still casts a warm glow. He pours a hot drink, letting the steam rise into the cold air. The shelter now works with the hillside instead of against it. Roof from the stone, walls from the earth, heat trapped safely inside. Instead of forcing the environment to adapt, he aligned his survival with the landscape. A place of absolute quiet.